Somewhere, right now, someone is describing their job, their marriage, their entire life as sisyphean. They mean it as a complaint, endless, pointless effort that goes nowhere. And almost every single person who uses that word has gotten the actual point of the essay it comes from exactly backwards. The philosopher who wrote it wasn't describing despair. He was describing the only real path out of it. And his final line, the one people quote constantly without understanding it, isn't tragic at all. It's the opposite. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. This isn't really a story about a man pushing a rock. It's an argument about what to do with your life once you've admitted, honestly, that it might not mean anything at all. The essay is called The Myth of Sisyphus, and it was written by Albert Camus, a French-Algerian philosopher, published in 1942 in the middle of Nazi-occupied France, a fact that matters more than it first appears. Camus wasn't writing a comfortable, abstract thought experiment from the safety of a peaceful world. He was writing it while the entire structure of meaning that Europe had relied on, tradition, religion, progress, national identity, was visibly collapsing around him in real time. He starts the essay with one of the most direct opening lines in the history of philosophy. He says there is only one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Not as a dramatic flourish, but as a literal claim. Judging whether life is or is not worth living, he argues, is the fundamental question underneath every other question a person asks. Everything else, science, politics, art, comes after that one. To get to his answer, Camus first needs you to sit with a very uncomfortable idea, one he calls the absurd. The absurd, in Camus' sense, isn't just a word for something ridiculous or funny. It's a specific collision. On one side, you have a human mind that desperately wants the universe to make sense, that wants meaning, purpose, some kind of underlying order or reason for things. On the other side, you have an actual universe that is, as far as anyone can honestly demonstrate, completely silent on that question. It doesn't answer, it doesn't confirm your need for meaning, and it doesn't deny it either. It simply doesn't respond at all. The absurd, Camus says, lives exactly in that gap, not in the universe itself and not in the human mind itself, but in the confrontation between the two. You want an answer, the world will not give you one. That collision is the actual absurd condition, and Camus argues it's the actual starting point of human life, whether people admit it or not. Most people, Camus observes, spend their whole lives trying to escape that collision rather than face it directly. He identifies a few common escape routes, and he's sharply critical of all of them. One escape route is what he calls philosophical suicide, and this doesn't mean literally dying, it means taking a leap, usually into religious faith or some other totalizing belief system that answers the question of meaning by simply asserting an answer without any actual proof, because the alternative, sitting with the unanswered question, feels unbearable. Camus doesn't say this makes people bad or foolish. He says it's an understandable move, but it's also a kind of surrender. It resolves the tension by refusing to keep looking at it. The other escape route is actual suicide, ending the confrontation completely by ending the person having it. Camus rejects this too, and this is the actual center of the entire essay. He argues that if life truly is absurd, if there genuinely is no external guaranteed meaning handed to you by the universe, the correct response is not to end the confrontation. It's to live inside it, permanently, with your eyes open, without lying to yourself about it in either direction. He calls this stance revolt. Not revolt in the political sense, but a kind of quiet, constant defiance. You see clearly that the universe will not hand you meaning. You refuse to pretend otherwise, and you also refuse to let that fact stop you from living, fully, deliberately, with intensity, precisely because this life, absurd or not, is the only one you actually have. This is where Sisyphus finally enters the essay, and Camus uses him as the closing image, the concrete embodiment of everything he's just spent pages arguing abstractly. In the old Greek myth, Sisyphus was a king punished by the gods for repeatedly cheating death. His punishment, specifically chosen for its futility, was to push an enormous boulder up a steep mountain for eternity. Every time he nears the top, the boulder rolls back down and he has to start again, forever. No progress, no completion, no reward waiting at the end. For most people who invoke this myth casually, that's where the story ends, and it reads as a symbol of pure, hopeless suffering. But Camus is interested in one very specific moment inside the myth that almost nobody focuses on: the walk back down the mountain. After the boulder rolls away from him, Sisyphus has to walk back down, alone, fully conscious, with nothing to do and nothing to push, before he reaches the bottom and starts all over again. Camus calls this walk that hour like a breathing space, and argues that it's the most important part of the entire myth because it's the moment when Sisyphus is completely aware of his situation. He's not distracted by the labor, he's simply present, walking, knowing exactly what's coming next, knowing it will never end, knowing it will never mean anything in any cosmic sense. And Camus' argument is that in that specific moment, walking down, fully conscious, Sisyphus is actually superior to his fate, not crushed by it. His rock is his own. His struggle, meaningless as it is on any grand cosmic scale, still belongs entirely to him. Nobody gave it purpose from outside, but nobody can take away the fact that it's his to carry, his to walk back down toward, his to pick back up. Camus writes that this awareness, this refusal to look away from the pointlessness while still choosing to keep pushing, is itself a form of victory. Not because the labor becomes meaningful in some cosmic sense, it doesn't, but because Sisyphus stops waiting for the universe to justify his life and simply lives it anyway, on his own terms, fully awake. That's the context behind the essay's final line, the one people quote constantly without ever reading the several dense pages that build up to it. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Camus isn't saying Sisyphus is happy the way someone is happy on a good vacation. He's saying that once you strip away the fantasy of external guaranteed meaning and simply accept the task in front of you as your own, fully, without illusions, something like happiness becomes available anyway, not despite the absurd, but directly inside it. The essay was written in 1942, remember, by a man living under occupation, watching a continent tear itself apart, with no guarantee that the war would end in anything but catastrophe. Camus wasn't writing a comforting bedtime philosophy from a place of safety. He was arguing, in the middle of genuine historical despair, that meaning handed down from outside, whether by gods, by nations, by grand historical narratives, could not be trusted or relied upon, and that the only honest ground left to stand on was the deliberate, clear-eyed choice to keep pushing the rock anyway. Here's the fact that stays with you. The word people use today to describe the most demoralizing, hopeless kind of repetitive effort is drawn directly from an essay that argues the exact opposite conclusion. Camus never says the struggle is worth it because it secretly leads somewhere. He says it's worth it precisely because it doesn't have to lead anywhere at all, and you get to keep living it fully, regardless. The rock was never the point. Sisyphus's clear, unflinching awareness of his own condition and his refusal to either lie about it or be destroyed by it was always the actual point. What would it mean to look directly at the part of your life that feels most repetitive and pointless and choose to call it yours anyway? Leave your answer in the comments. I read every one of them. If you want to keep reading between the lines, follow me. There are more of these. There always are.